started the conversation around 2011, 2012, when Governor Resurgence and I went to Akure to meet Governor Mimiko. We sat down and said, look, we have a duty, indeed a responsibility, to rescue the family heirloom, the commonwealth of our people. And Governor Mimiko was very supportive, and we took on the responsibility of really working on OICL, and I was saddled with that responsibility as the point person amongst the governors to do a health check of all companies in the Odu'a Investment Corporation. I wanted to be professional about it, so I retained the services of a known consultancy group, world-renowned consultancy group, KPMG.
Odu'a Investment Company Limited was incorporated in July 1976 to take over the business interests of the former western state of Nigeria, now Oyo, Ogun, Ondo, Osun, and Ekiti states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The company commenced business on the 1st of October 1976. Since inception, the company has operated as a conglomerate with over 70% of our business as investments or joint ventures with reputable multinationals. Formerly known as the Western Nigeria Development Corporation, the company continues to hold a deeply significant place in the hearts and minds of Yoruba people of Southwest region of Nigeria.
When Odu'a started, when that company started, I wasn't paying attention. Although I know the history now, I know that it's a conglomerate of all the companies that the Western region set up at some point decided to put everything under the same umbrella as a group of companies that at that time rivaled even the biggest companies in Nigeria at that time.
Growing up as a young boy and as a Yoruba boy, we saw Odu'a as the legacy of the Yoruba race, pioneered by the late Obafemi Awolowo.
It's our heritage, our patrimony. Look, when the heavens were falling in this country, people who were being sacked, particularly Yorubas, they were being edged out of federal agencies, external ministry, and all that. Odu'a was the only standing post that retained the Yorubas and non-Yorubas. So the gun was aimed at Odu'a.
My recollection of Papa's work at that time, he was very keen on industrialization, on bringing companies into the country, and he often talked about the battles that he had with the colonial administration. From what I gathered, he won most of the arguments, and so those were the companies that became Odu'a Investment Company.
And we saw Odu'a as a growth engine for the Southwest.
It happened to be the only major employment driver in the Western region then.
Their banks had branches in New York and in the city of London.
After the initial strings of successes under its founding fathers and early enablers like Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Chief S.L. Akintola, and the highly esteemed civil servants of the era like Chief Simeon Adibo, the latter-day OICL went through challenging times that threatened its existence.
What I found out is that Odu'a has a lot of opportunities, but the problem is that people, and I can tell you it was during the military era that they thought, oh, this is a national cake, and they started dipping their hands. selling the properties of Odu'a?
There was a planned, deliberate effort, not only to destroy Odu'a Investment Company Limited, but to seize some of the properties, choice properties, because Western Nigeria government, led by Awolowo and later Akintola, they established the Ikeja Industrial Estate, Apapa Industrial Estate. So many of the industries were strategically placed.
Somehow, somewhat, it survived, but not without some indelible scars. While the organization was able to survive external aggressions, internal mismanagement was one challenge that humbled it.
At that point in time, I'll honestly tell you, Odu'a had many subsidiaries. Subsidiaries are companies that Odu'a owns 50% and above. They have associate and affiliate companies that they own more than 20% or less than 50%. They have related companies where they have interest, which are companies that they own less than 20%. And at that particular point in time, I can tell you most of the subsidiary companies were moribund.
More fundamentally, when even the organization had experienced instances of subsidiaries actually dying, that sense of urgency that something was wrong with that organization in terms of alignment for its economic and social growth was not there.
By about 2010, when Dr. John Kawadi Fayemi was sworn in as the elected governor of Ekiti State, the company was almost at ground zero. Propelled by the urgent need to stop the hemorrhage and recapture the glory of the conglomerate, the governors started a conversation.
I gave them my advice that they will need to dissolve the board and constitute membership from professionals. That if they are there to be making profit, they will need professionals as directors, not politicians.
Odu'a had become shadow of itself. It's become very bureaucratic, non-profit earning ventures. They then decided that Governor Kawadi Fayemi, should champion the transformation.
A lot of conversation had gone on in the Afenifere Renewal Group at that stage, long before I even became governor. Because we had set up the Yoruba Academy to look into some of those giant strides taken by previous leaders that we needed to rekindle and strengthen where they still existed but were in a parlor state. And one of the decisions or one of the recommendations to us was we needed to be more professional in the recruitment of the leadership of the Odu'a Investment Corporation.
There was 2 instances that led to it, and governors took advantage of the instances and dissolved the board. After the dissolution, then KPMG was brought in to prepare a paper for them.
What was our specific mandate? One was to do a diagnostic review of the entire group, what you typically call strategic health review. And then, after reviewing, come up with key recommendations to transform Odu'a.
And so, KPMG, the international consulting firm, submitted its report and recommendations. In their resolve to see OICL rise again, the governors set to work implementing everything in the proposal to the letter.
I was at a stage in PZ where I was planning my retirement. And just by the way, this blind advert came. And I didn't really take it too seriously and what I did. I was planning retirement, so I wasn't really desperate for a job. So when further contacts were then made as to say, this is now available and they are committed to merit, then I think the Yoruba-ness in me started coming out. So I had to take it as a challenge that, okay, well, this time around, those of us who have been complainant on the other side, now you are being offered on a platter of gold. Can you make the difference? Really go in there and tell people that what is done in multinationals can also be done in an indigenous conglomerate.
Now enters Wale Raji, the new GMD. His initial assessment of OICL after resumption was a company that was asset rich or cash poor.
Well, I'll say about the time he came in, there were challenges here and there. Let me put it that way. There were challenges here and there, and I recall the shareholders in 2012 commissioned KPMG to carry out a health check on the company. But it was based on that the recruitment of a new GMD came up when the former GMD gave his notice that he was leaving.
I would want to believe that Odu'a was in his next phase of evolution. For every group managing director, and I happen to be the 8th group managing director, they played their own role. You could see their mark that they made. And based on the circumstances in which they operated also. Some people operated under military rule. Let me be quite frank with you. If it was under military rule, maybe I would have resigned my job here. Because there will be a point where there will be things that I cannot take orders on. So one needs to understand the context within which different people operated.
We came up with having to put in a 5-year strategic plan with the support of KPMG. So a document was drafted and with the board's approval. So the journey actually started to see how to run with that document. Unfortunately, I would say also because there was a little bit of discord, disagreements in principle, maybe between him and successive board chairman. So that document really was not executed.
Some of them put his name in the papers, accused him of all sorts of things. Some staff, backed up by board members, took him to court and took Odu'a to court. It took, even as a Yoruba man, it took also my effort and some effort of some individuals, one-on-one with Duale Raji going to governors and appealing to the governors to stay with him. And the governors talked to him. And that was why he was able to make progress.
What was clear to me is that if I make the difference, then it will encourage people like myself and Pedigree to always be attracted to come from the private sector to come and make a difference in government.
And one must credit, as I said, the management for trying to turn around. It's not easy telling an elephant to turn around in a room. I'm sure the outgoing GMD himself would say that probably one of his biggest challenges he faced when he first came in was trying to get them to have a different thinking.
This became the turning point for Raji to either give up or commit to do whatever was legitimate and honorable to proceed with the onerous task of reviving and ensuring the sustained growth of OICL. To succeed in these efforts, he had reached the definitive conclusion that the new governance structure had become inevitable.
One of the things that was giving Odu'a a problem, the fact that the governors were coming, nominate a director. And if another governor comes in, they will change. So most times, some directors, their lifespan in the system, probably 2 years, one year. We have some cases in court where the governor comes and says, I don't like this one, which, we said, no. For you to change any director of Odu'a, the person must have ended his or her tenure.
Unlike the past, there is now a better guaranteed security of tenure for board members. Once appointed, only by the rules of the Corporate Affairs Commission can any member be removed.
That document gave the power of nomination of directors to shareholder governors, but the power of appointing them was vested in the board.
With the new board members that have been brought on board, 2 EDs were appointed. The general managers for key positions, treasury and some other key positions in HR, were recruited from solid private sector.
The recent past, states that own Odu'a,
for the first time in so many years. They're getting dividends, which never used to happen. One can also say that even at the management level, a lot of professionalism has been introduced, and it has allowed Odu'a to dabble into so many sectors of the economy.
I chair the investment committee, so new investments would come within that purview. And in the past few years, new companies have come up in the Odu'a group. We have the Southwest Information Technology Suite, and then the Southwest Agri Company was also set up during his tenure as the group managing director.
We want to be a world-class conglomerate. And how can you be a world-class conglomerate? We must be able to compete worldwide. We must, and I'm happy to tell you that we got a good rating. We got rating A, and that was the first rating in the history of Odu'a.
Despite the initial opposition, this governance reform was successful, thanks to the full backing of the governors. After the reforms, a new board was constituted and inaugurated. Raji was appointed for another term. I now had a second chance to introduce another 5-year strategy document called the SRC 2025.
There it identified in 5 years what do you want, who we are now, what do you want to be in 5 years, 2025. We want to believe that what we have as our portfolio now, what can we sweat in it? What can we sweat? So you take, for example, property development through joint venture and what have you, like sweating assets. You have a big parcel of land, only one colonial building on it. What are you doing with it? You sweat it and you come up like what we have, some of the things we have in Ibadan now. You know, one single plot of land used to have a colonial building. Today, you have 16 terraces on that land. So you are sweating your asset from that point of view.
If you look at Odu'a today, there are still some businesses that we are part of that have been in existence before independence. An example is Nigerite. We own a substantial stake in Nigerite today, and we've had that stake since 1959. Same thing goes for Lafarge. The predecessor company for Lafarge was Blue Circle that came into the country, I believe, in the 50s as well, before Nigeria's independence. And we still own a good stake in Lafarge. So we see partnership as a way that we definitely have to grow the business. So we are cognizant of the fact that we need to use our existing assets where applicable to leverage into new partnerships that will create value for this generation and future generations. The other part of the strategy will be where we see good management, good businesses that are currently running that need expansion capital. We can then inject some capital of our own and be part of the business going forward.
Unlike the confusion that blunted the sharpness of his corporate vision sometime in the recent past, the new board of directors has wisely chosen to restructure and focus the OICL into a proper holding company with no operational footprints.
When I became the chairman, we looked at so many things. We agreed that, look, let us have a lean holdco, whereby all the real estate business that Odu'a is doing should go to Wema Board, because Wema Board is 100% owned by Odu'a. So you can't have a son and father doing the same business and be competing. So today, I'm happy to tell you that our head office, Cocoa House, is a lean head office, and we now coordinate all our subsidiaries.
As OICL successfully implements its SRC 2025 strategy, attracting new investors and regaining some public trust, the dedication and perseverance of Raji and his team has begun to pay off.
So people have now started seeing Odu'a in a better shape, in a better form, and see us as a very serious conglomerate. And that is what we want to achieve. And I'm happy to tell you that we bid for the marginal field. Odu'a won OMN 95, and we paid stipulation bonus and everything. But we have a partner now. Odu'a have about 48.26%.
Premier Hotel was one of the things Wale Raji said he would make sure that he transformed, Premier Hotel and Lagos Airport. It took almost 2 years to find a partner for Premier Hotel. The partner that has been concession that they've ceded significant percentage shareholding to in Premier Hotel today are rebuilding Premier Hotel.
So you find out that what we are looking at will be a Premier that have struggled to make, let me say, 400 million turnover in a year, to a Premier that will make it 4 billion naira turnover in a year because of the scale. But that is being achieved by making sure that what our strength was being traded into the joint venture, such that our partner was effectively coming in to cover for what we consider to be our weakness.
Perhaps the most significant achievement of Raji during his first term in office was the admission of Lagos State into the Odu'a family as a joint and equal owner with the original 5 states of Oyo, Ogun, Osun, Ondo, and Ekiti, who together make up the homogeneous Yoruba community of the southwest region of Nigeria.
Becoming governor, I became very curious, and the curiosity was more about why Lagos State was just not part of that group. And it made me to start asking questions, and I became more interested in the activities of Odu'a Investments, and I wanted to see why a major state that had huge comparative advantages will not be part of that economic group.
Let me say all the credit to government body and all the credit also to late Dipo Famakinwa. His Excellency expressed interest in this regard as part of Yoruba unity. And Dipo Famakinwa, bless the memory, may the good God continue to bless him and take care of the family left behind. Then became the linkage.
It started not making economic sense, because when you compare all the 5 states that were in that Odu'a group, they were just like 10% of the total resources that Lagos State was generating. So anybody that had a huge vision of what a regional economic integration group should look like.
Increasingly, our states, the 6 states, must also now realize that there's power in banding together. You gain more traction. You can imagine those who sat down in a room and said, let's have a 25-story building 71 years ago. That audacity of thought is what we now must replicate.
I want to actually even say here that the strategic book and the strategic plan that had been conceptualized by Don, that the development agenda of Western Nigeria, was actually more or less like a catalyst for me.
And we went through a very clear process of engagement to make sure this was going to be handled, bringing PwC to manage the process, because it's equally a very delicate thing also, to make sure it was arm's length transaction that we did. The governors met in council, they agreed what was going to be paid for Lagos to have equal equity in OICM.
To show you that it's a very shrewd businessman, he actually proposed that Lagos State should pay almost like 27 billion for that 16% that we had. And we had to negotiate for almost like 1 year.
I think most people forget that Lagos State is probably 90% part of the Southwest. Anything up to Fadi and from the Korea and the Lekki and all of that was Southwest. So I am glad that they are back home, and so together they would work brilliantly.
As Mr. Adewale Raji steps down, the foundation he has laid for growth and governance at Odu'a Investments Company Limited sets the stage for exponential progress.
I always tell people that a fantastic leader without a good successor is a failure. And Wale has done very well. And with that, we need to put something in place whereby in the history of Odu'a, this is the first time with the real competition his successor is coming with him.
I still believe that whoever takes over for him, I think it's Yunusa that is taking over for him, still has a lot of work to do. Yunusa was also recruited as a GED, as a group executive director. So he has an understanding of some of the things that have been done.
You know, when you have 4 or 5 states, with Lagos State now in different political parties, the person needs to be very, very diplomatic.
So I came in as a chief finance officer for the group, and after a few months, I was made for a succession planning to be put in place for Mr. Rajid I'll be leaving at the end of May this year. Quite a listening leader. He's always the last to talk. He allows everybody in the room, to give their opinion and all that. And then when it comes in to give an idea, in most cases you see him taking into cognizance the things that other people have contributed to it.
One other thing about Mr. Raji that I really appreciate is his maturity. No matter how strong, the storm or the problem, I've realized one thing, that is always calm. That calmness does not mean he's not acting, but he becomes introspective and then comes out with a way forward.
That's been an opportunity working with him. He's one of the most humblest DMD I've worked with. He doesn't carry the office with air of arrogance and carry the office in his head. Very humble, relate to you, and people like that are very rare.
Ìtàdéwálé Rájí jẹ́ ọ̀gá tó jẹ́ pé ó máa ń fẹ́ ire fún yàn. Àwọn ló jẹ́ kí n mọ bó ṣe ń kówó jọ. Mo gbé ìmọ̀ lọ pé mo ralẹ̀. Lọ́dẹ̀ tún fún mi lówó kún tí mo fi ralẹ̀ tí mo fi kọ́lé ara mi.
I think I really have to be grateful to God and all people of the Southwest of interest who sacrificed enormously supporting me. Just like you have detractors who were always putting the pit, digging the pit for you to fall inside. You also find people who have no relationship whatsoever who came to support. So you have angels and you have devils all competing. At the end of the day, we are quite glad that this is the story that is very positive by every consideration at this point in time.
You should find peace of God, which is more important than any other thing that we have done. And then you should relish everything that he has achieved in the last 10 years and be proud of himself.
With a focus on transparency, strategy, and innovation, the company looks forward to a future marked by success and sustainability.
I would like it to be back, to get back to where it was, to be a huge conglomerate, an asset that the governments can draw on to prosecute the progressive agenda, which I believe is their heritage.
The MD that is leaving has laid a very solid foundation that others can ride on. Odu'a has become attractive, and people are now leaving thriving private sector companies to work in Odu'a. So are they positioned? Yes, they are positioned, to take us far.
I want history to remember me that when Bimbo Ashiru was the group chairman, with his team, they turned Odu'a and made sure Odu'a became in the world conglomerate. And hopefully, and by God's grace, we will be able to achieve that.
Let me be quite frank, because the foundation is laid, I expect them to have exponential growth, no doubt about it. I know we have cut at it with the different experiences we have had, and at this time around, we will do things differently, which we are already doing.